Hi, welcome to Team Taurus and Other Adventures. And this video is the one that I think I've been looking to try to make for the past 2 years. And it's always been very, very hard. I had to do a lot of personal work on me to make sure that I was in a good enough place to deliver this story, because one thing you'll learn about me is I like having information. So let's get into today's video. Our video today is our journey to diagnosis. So first, let's take a sip of coffee. Oh, shit strong. So, PJ is 4. He'll be 5 September 2021. And first 5 years of your child's life is usually something ridden with excitement, new experiences, first times. And in my little family, your 5th birthday is a big deal. It's like your first real big milestone after 1. So I always had in mind to throw a really big 5th birthday for both my kids. And this year, on top of the pandemic, things will be a little bit different, but nonetheless, we will still celebrate 5. So PJ was born completely normal. And when I say completely normal, as healthy as anyone who's having a baby could want. I had a difficult delivery. Other than that, he was a fat, chunky little baby who loved to eat and had no problems latching on, and he was breastfed till he was about 6 months, and then I had to go back to work. And he was just far too needy for me to produce enough milk, to pump and produce enough milk to satiate him. He was not that kid. He was a beast. PJ had a hard time transitioning from breast milk to formula. He hated it. He knew what was happening. He was not a fan. And but he got there. We got there. Then, the big milestone, first time to eat. In all honesty, PJ was a really chunky baby. So we pushed that milestone off a little bit. And the doctors were okay with it. So PJ started trying food about 6 months old. And then it took a while to find a couple things he liked. We got it. We hit the stride. Then it was never a problem. PJ crawled on time. He walked on time. PJ had first words just after his first birthday. He had ball. He would say mom, dad, dad. He would say go. He would say do. Those were his words, like any other typical 1-year-old. He was in the walker. We put him in the walker because I did do that with Elika. So we put him in the walker. And he zoomed off. He was zooming around the house by 11 months. So we just knew he was going to be a whole thing and live up to his nickname, which is Major Danger Taurus. And then he was about 11 months old when he started structured daycare. This is where the story gets interesting. From the point, and now he went to a really froofy, expensive daycare. So it wasn't like I had him in somebody's house. He was in a froofy, expensive daycare. Because I hated that I had to send him to daycare so early, but I had to get back to work and I had 2 kids, and I couldn't juggle it anymore. So he went to daycare. From the point of starting daycare, just before his official first birthday, so he started early September, to about... We withdrew from that school in March. So you're talking October, November, December, January, February, 6 months. In the process of him being there 6 months, PJ was chronically ill. I mean, those kids, not just him, but the whole class, they were chronically ill. It didn't help that most of them shared the same pediatrician either. He constantly with the runny noses. I could not get that to stop. With the fevers, that classroom even had a rare case of Coxsackie. The kids were just constantly sick, and because now he's never feeling well, and then me ridden with guilt, I didn't push him on milestones. I was a milestone warrior for Elika, but for PJ, it's he'll do it when he wants to do it. He's gonna be his own person. So I didn't maintain his milestones or whatever, because at that point, since his birthday, he was doing so many things. I was like, we're gonna be fine. And then things started changing. We noticed that his words started to sound a little numb. Like, if you've ever spoken to someone with hearing disability, what they say, the words that they say, they sound numb, meaning like that they don't have the proper pronunciation all the way through. And PJ's words started to sound like that. And even one time, my mom and me were playing with him, and he said ball, but he said it in such a way where my mom goes, kind of sounded like a deaf person. I was like, yeah, that sounded a little weird. Now, I'm going to tell you, from September to March, we had taken PJ to the pediatrician at least 6 times because of the constant being ill in daycare. And it's a virus, he has to get through it. It's a virus, he has to get through it. When the rare case of Coxsackie happened, his pediatrician's like, oh, PJ has eczema that is being really triggered by his viruses that he's had because he's been ill. So this is a really rough trigger of eczema. This is like what we were going through. So I was like, I can't. Finally, there was an episode at home where Elika was playing with cymbals and she went in for a really big clang, and PJ didn't budge, didn't flinch. Everybody else in the room like jumped. PJ didn't flinch. Patrick went behind him and yelled his name, and he didn't flinch. We knew something was wrong. Went back to the pediatrician. It's like, hey, okay, so now he can't hear. So now what do we do? All of a sudden, on that last trip, oh, PJ has a substantial amount of fluid in his ears. I see fluid in his ears. You see fluid now? We were only here 6 times in the last 6 months. You see fluid now. So, okay. So he goes, you're going to have to go see an ENT. And that's where everything starts. Our visit to the ENT. We go to the ENT, and the ENT tells us PJ has substantial amount of fluid in his cranium, and it's not just in his drum, but he has his eardrum has an awkward shape, so he has divots in his ears, and so therefore there's a lot of fluid getting backed up. So basically at this point, because of the amount of fluid he had in his head, PJ was clinically deaf. We had done the audiology tests and everything. They're like, his eardrums aren't moving. So we walked away from that ENT realizing our son can't hear us. It would explain the withdrawn behavior. It would explain why he wasn't responding to his name. It would explain the lack of interest. It would explain the clinginess, because I couldn't move unless PJ knew exactly where I was, or he was attached to the hip. And he wanted no one but me. And it was tough. It would explain his irrational fear to do new things. He didn't like to go outside. It was a lot of going on, and we just didn't know what was going on. So PJ's deaf. Okay, that makes sense, right? So now this happens at a really difficult time, because we discovered he was deaf about at 16 months. So we don't know how long this has been in development. So we don't know how long he hasn't truly been hearing us. But his whole time in daycare, he didn't take to it immediately right away. He finally got around to it, but then, he started having this withdrawn behavior, which all now makes sense, right? So before we had found out he was deaf, one of the daycare workers had mentioned, hey, I'm noticing some awkward behavior, his withdrawn, he's not interested, whatever. I think you should get him evaluated. That triggered me, because I had an experience with getting evaluations, and I didn't want to do it again, because I did it one time with Elika. And I was like, no, he's too young. I'm going to give it time. Then now I find out PJ can't hear, and I go back. I'm like, oh, well, this is why. So we all accepted that, all of those behaviors were due to the loss of hearing. So we get surgery. We had to deal with some medicine situations, but we get surgery. Get some tubes in, get his adenoids out. That was a whole nother thing. And hearing kind of resumes after about a month after surgery. He's finally hearing normal. His eardrums are behaving normal. And you can see he can hear. Everything is new. He's taking everything in. He loved hearing the trains go by. He loved hearing trucks and buses outside. You can see, it changed him. You can see it, but nothing developed in his speech. Nothing new came, and all the words he had were gone. And he just wasn't. What did develop over that time was stimming behaviors, the flapping, the exciting, the jumping. So PJ did develop stims during that time. Now, if you have a couple of different things, so his ear issues he had caused a couple of delays, not only his hearing, but that also caused a delay in his communication. And also, because he had deep inner ear issues, it caused issues with his coordination and fine motor development, and just his core development as a whole. So PJ didn't run as great as other kids, couldn't balance really well, he didn't climb well, he fell a lot, because he's kind of figuring out how to, where babies automatically kind of develop over time a strong sense of control of their core limbs and stuff. When they have inner ear issues and they have coordination issues, that also gets developed, delayed. So there's just was a lot of delays, and so we went back to our ENT. I was like, okay, like 2 months after, he's like, well, I'm going to tell you, you should really give him 3 to 6 months to really figure it out. He's had a significant delay in both, his development from communication and also coordination. You might want to give it some time. No. Time was not on my side. I did not want to give it time. I wanted him to sing happy birthday at his second birthday. I wanted him to say, I'm happy. I wanted him to say something by his second birthday. I didn't care what it was, but I wanted at least our original words back by his second birthday. So I'm like, don't have that time. So what I did was I picked up the phone, and I'm not, this is as simple as it was. I picked up the phone, I dialed 311. I'm in New York City, so I dialed 311 and said, I think I need to have my son evaluated. Okay, hold on, I'll connect you to the agencies. It was that simple. I didn't do anything more than that. And then I spoke to someone. They asked me a bunch of questions. She asked me if I had an agency in mind I wanted to do the evaluations. I said I did not, and they set all that up. I would then, from that phone call, it took 4 weeks. 4 weeks in total for the day it was a week before his second birthday. Someone came in and said, Ms. Rodriguez, it is our understanding that your son is showing symptoms of ASD. A week before his second birthday. We had 5 different evaluations. We had a speech, OT, PT, special instructor, and a psych evaluation. And it was on the psych evaluation that she's the one who delivered the news. The thing is, I kind of knew. I had, from the moment that the stimming behavior started, they really worried me. And I was like, this can't be normal. This isn't right. Like, I'm worried. Like, the stimming for him when it first started was really really intense. He would get stuck in a stim, like really stuck. Like, he looked like he was paralyzed sometimes. He'd be stuck in the stim, and I was not knowing what to do. I'm like trying to break it, like clap his hands, like, oh, PJ. I was like, oh my God, something's wrong. But it would just turn out that now that he has his hearing back, he was in sensory overload. Like, between all of the things, he was in sensory overload, and he couldn't process it. So the stimming behavior became a way of him maintaining over processing of both stimulation and sensory input. He just didn't know what to do, and that was his body's reaction. I would learn more about that throughout that time, but it scared me a lot. And so I started Googling, started YouTubing, started going down paths like WebMDing. You don't ever do that. Just going down paths like, why is he doing this? There's got to be a reason. And I started finding kids that look just like PJ. Behaviors, temperament, activities that he would do the same thing. And I was like, oh my God, I think PJ's autistic. And I went through, now not knowing that and just assuming that, Patrick, I couldn't have asked for a better partner in crime. He kept me off the ledge. Like, I was like crying every time. I'm like, oh my God, this is what it is. And I would cry. And he would pull me back over, like, he goes, you're not the professional. You should not be diagnosing him, because that is not your job. Your job is to take care of him. Your job is to love him. Your job is to help him be his best self. But your job is not to be a doctor. Okay, fine. And I dealt with that on a constant basis. I dealt with that. But then that day came and the news hit me. Like, there was a side of me that says, oh my God, I was right. And then there was a side of me that said, I can't believe I was right. Why am I right? This is not fair. Honestly, that was my first reaction. And I still remember that reaction, because I think the psych evaluation lady was looking at me because I didn't have a reaction. I was like, okay. And I literally think that was it. And she's like, are you okay? I have time. Let's talk. So we sat, because at the time we were sitting on the floor playing with PJ. We sat at my dining room table, and she's like, what are you worried about? What is this reaction? I don't understand this reaction. Let's talk about it. So then I told her everything I had done up to that point, and all of the research and reading and everything. So I kind of knew this already. I put it on the table as an option, because of what I discovered on my own. And then so we went down, and then she's like, are you concerned for your safety? My safety? What do you mean my safety? Like, what do you mean? And then she shared some really sad statistics of Latino families that come out with a child with special needs, and then the husband doesn't take it well because it's a shock to pride. And I was like, oh yeah, no, we don't have that problem. I was like, PJ's dad couldn't be more supportive in whatever it is he needs, we need, I need. It's not a thing. So she's like, oh, I'm so happy to hear that. She goes, but if you need me to talk to him because he doesn't believe you. I'm like, doesn't believe me? like, I don't know what you've been dealing with, lady, but that's not the case in this house. So it was really an odd experience, but she was super helpful. And then we start the journey of therapy. But to the point of when we started having issues, to the point that we heard Ms. Rodriguez, it is our collective understanding that PJ is showing symptoms of ASD. It was about a year in the making, a year from him starting daycare and being chronically sick. Unfortunate pediatric appointments, which led to ENT, which led to surgery, which led to a lack of development, which led to evaluation, which led to our diagnosis. And the only thing I can say about all of that is, in all honesty, being in denial that your child may need help could possibly be the worst thing you do. Even if you're wrong, be wrong. Be happy you were wrong. Be so happy you were wrong. Celebrate being wrong, but don't hesitate in getting your child evaluated, because autism is not the only neurodiversity issue that children deal with. There are so many neurodiversity issues on the rise for children, and they're going undiagnosed. And it's making life for these kids when they hit high school and college very, very difficult. If you had the opportunity to find out your child has ADHD or severe anxiety or depression, or anxiety brought on by severe scenarios like tests, and you can get your child special assistance in those scenarios via something called an individual education plan, just do it. There's no shame in it. There's no shame in it at all. And just get your kid evaluated, regardless of the age. If they seem fine, but now they're 7, 8, 9, 10, and something just feels off, get them evaluated. Evaluation oftentimes costs nothing, but the peace of mind that you gain is priceless. So do it. But I can tell you now, we're still very much in, every year is a new part of this journey for us, but that was our road to diagnosis, and I'm happy to share it. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I'm an open book, so if I can help you, you let me know if I can help you. and I absolutely will. If you made it this far, thanks for listening. And I'll be back with shorter videos, I promise.